I've got some troubling news about England's royal family.
The air in London was thick with tension, the kind that clings to your skin and makes every breath feel heavier than the last. When the news broke, Harry confirms heartbreaking update about Meghan health after leaked footage. And in an instant, the world stopped spinning for royal watchers across the globe. This wasn't just another tabloid rumor, another whispered speculation in the shadows of Buckingham Palace. This was Prince Harry himself, stepping into the light with a truth so raw, so devastating, that it would shake the very foundations of the monarchy. The leaked footage had been the spark, but Harry's words were the wildfire, and nothing would ever be the same again. The video, grainy but undeniable, had surfaced just 48 hours earlier on an obscure forum before exploding across social media like a bomb. It showed Meghan, her face pale, her movements slow, her eyes hollow in a way no one had ever seen before, not even in the darkest days of the Oprah interview. She was walking with a cane, her left hand trembling as she reached for support, her voice barely above a whisper as she spoke to someone off camera. The clip was only 17 seconds long, but it was enough to send the internet into a frenzy. Was she sick? Was it a relapse of some old injury? Or was this something new, something the palace had been hiding from the world? The questions burned like wildfire, and then, like a thunderclap, Harry's statement arrived. It came not through the traditional royal channels, not through Kensington Palace or the King's press office, but through Archewell, Harry and Meghan's own foundation, a move that spoke volumes in itself. The message was short, but every word carried the weight of 1,000 unshed tears. The past few months have been a journey no family should ever have to endure. The leaks, the invasions of privacy, the relentless speculation, it has all taken a toll. But today, I must address the truth, not just for Meghan's sake, but for the sake of every person who has ever felt the crushing weight of public scrutiny while battling a private war. My wife is fighting. She is fighting with a strength that humbles me every single day. But she is also human. And humans, no matter how strong, have their limits. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. But Harry wasn't done. He revealed that Meghan had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition, one that had been worsening in silence, a condition so aggressive that it had begun to affect her nervous system. The cane in the footage wasn't a prop. The trembling wasn't an act. It was real. It was happening. And the palace, according to Harry, had known for months. But here's where the story takes a turn so sharp, so unexpected, that even the most seasoned royal commentators were left gasping. Because while Harry was preparing to share his truth, another bombshell was about to drop. One that would expose the deep, festering divides within the royal family and drag Princess, and the Queen's most private and disciplined daughter, into a scandal so explosive it would make Megxit look like a minor misunderstanding. It started with a phone call, a single, late-night conversation between a senior palace aide and a journalist who had spent decades covering the royals. The aide, shaken and clearly conflicted, revealed that Princess and had, in a moment of uncharacteristic fury, confronted Camilla in a private meeting at Clarence House. The topic? The alleged role the Queen consort had played in suppressing news of Meghan's health struggles within the family. According to the aide, and had accused Camilla of prioritizing the monarchy's image over Meghan's well-being, of pressuring staff to keep the diagnosis quiet, of treating Meghan's suffering as a PR problem rather than a human crisis. The confrontation had been brutal, with Anne, normally the picture of stoic loyalty, demanding answers in a voice that had reportedly made even Camilla flinch. And then, the unthinkable happened. Someone in that room, someone with access to the highest levels of the royal household, leaked the details of that confrontation to the press. Not the full transcript, not the exact words, but enough to paint a picture of a family tearing itself apart. The leak was timed perfectly, or perhaps deliberately, to coincide with Harry's announcement. Within hours, the story wasn't just about Meghan's health anymore. It was about betrayal. It was about secrets. It was about the cracks in the royal facade that were now too wide to ignore. Social media erupted. Hashtags like #Anne versus Camilla and #PalaceCoverUp trended worldwide. Royal biographers scrambled to update their manuscripts. And through it all, one question echoed louder than the rest. What did King Charles know? The answer, when it came, would stun the nation. Because while Harry was preparing his statement, While Anne was locked in her private war with Camilla, King Charles was in Scotland, at Balmoral, where he had retreated after a tense family meeting the week prior. Sources close to the king described him as distraught, pacing the halls of the castle, muttering to himself, his usual composure shattered. He had, according to these sources, been blindsided by the severity of Meghan's condition. Harry had not told him the full extent of it, and now, with the leaked footage making headlines and Anne's confrontation with Camilla leaking to the press, Charles was caught in the middle, his worst fears realized. His family, his legacy, was unraveling in real time. The pressure was unbearable. The phone calls between London and Balmoral were frantic. Advisors urged him to make a statement, to take control of the narrative, but Charles hesitated. He was, after all, a man who had spent a lifetime waiting for the crown, only to inherit a monarchy on the brink of collapse. And then, just when it seemed the story couldn't get any more dramatic, Harry did the one thing no one expected. He called a last-minute press conference. Not in London, not in Los Angeles, but in New York at a small, intimate venue, with just a handful of trusted journalists in attendance. The world watched as he walked to the podium, his face a mask of grief and determination. There were no notes, no teleprompter, just Harry, his voice steady but his eyes haunted as he began to speak. I stand before you today not as a prince, not as a public figure, but as a husband who has watched the woman he loves suffer in silence while the world speculated, judged, and in some cases, celebrated her pain. The room fell silent. Meghan's diagnosis came as a shock to us both. We thought we could handle it privately, that we could shield our children from the worst of it. But the leaks, the invasions, the relentless cruelty, it has made that impossible. And so, I must ask you all, as human beings, to consider this. What kind of world do we live in where a woman's health crisis becomes entertainment? Where a family's private agony is turned into clickbait? But Harry wasn't just there to defend Meghan. He was there to expose the truth about what had been happening behind closed doors. And that's when he dropped the second bombshell. I won't lie to you. There have been conversations within my family that have deeply hurt me. Conversations where the focus was not on Meghan's health, but on how to manage the story. Where the priority was not her recovery, but the reputation of the institution. The journalists in the room exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. A senior royal, accusing the monarchy of putting image over compassion. Harry continued, his voice growing stronger. I love my family. I always will. But love means standing up for what's right, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. And right now, what's right is telling the truth. He paused, his hands gripping the podium. Meghan is strong. Stronger than any of you realize. But she is also exhausted. Exhausted from fighting a battle no one should have to fight alone. And so, I am here today to ask for one thing. Space. Space for her to heal. Space for our family to come to terms with what's happening. And space for the world to show a little humanity. The press conference lasted just 12 minutes, but its impact would be felt for years. Within an hour, Buckingham Palace released a statement. It was cautious, measured, the kind of language the royals use when they're damage control mode. The king is deeply concerned about the Duchess of Sussex's health and has been in private contact with the Duke to express his support. This is a family matter, and we ask that the public and the media respect their privacy during this difficult time. But the statement felt hollow to many. Where was the empathy? Where was the acknowledgement of the pain Harry had just described? The contrast between Harry's raw emotion and the palace's sterile response only fueled the fire. And then, Princess and the royal family's most private, most disciplined member, did something she had never done before. She broke her silence. Not in a statement, not in an interview, but in a leaked letter to a close friend, a letter that somehow found its way into the hands of the Daily Mail. In it, Anne wrote, I have spent my life serving this family, this institution. But there are moments when silence becomes complicity, and I refuse to be complicit in cruelty. The letter didn't mention Camilla by name, but the implication was clear, and had taken a side. And that side was not the one the palace had expected. The fallout was immediate. Camilla, who had been conspicuously quiet since the confrontation leaked, was nowhere to be seen. Sources claimed she was devastated, not just by Anne's betrayal, but by the public backlash. For years, she had worked to rebuild her image, to be seen as the steady, supportive queen consort. But now, in the court of public opinion, she was the villain, the woman who had allegedly silenced a sick Meghan, who had prioritized the crown over compassion. The tabloids had a field day. "Camilla's cold heart exposed," screamed one headline. And versus Camilla, the royal war no one saw coming, read another. And then, the most damning of all, did the Queen Consort cover up Meghan's illness? King Charles, meanwhile, was facing a crisis of his own. His health, already fragile after his own battles with illness, was deteriorating under the stress. Insiders reported that he was struggling to sleep, losing weight, his usual sharp mind clouded by worry. He had always been a man of duty, a man who believed in the sanctity of the monarchy above all else. But now, for the first time in his life, he was questioning everything. Had he failed his family? Had he failed the institution he had spent a lifetime preparing to lead? The questions gnawed at him, and with every passing hour, the weight of the crown felt heavier. Harry and Meghan, meanwhile, were hunkered down in their Montecito home, surrounded by a tight circle of trusted friends and advisors. The press conference had been draining for Harry, but for Meghan, it was something else entirely. According to sources close to the couple, she had watched from a separate room, her hands clenched in her lap, tears streaming down her face as Harry spoke. She had begged him not to do it, not because she didn't want the truth out there, but because she feared the backlash. She knew how the royal family operated. She knew how the British press operated. And she knew that once the story was out, there would be no going back. But Harry had been adamant. "If not now, then when?" he had asked her. "If not us, then who?" And so, she had relented, though not without reservations. Now, as the world reacted to Harry's words, Meghan was facing a different battle. The battle to stay strong in the face of overwhelming emotion. Her condition, while serious, was treatable, but the stress of the past few months had taken its toll. The leaked footage, the palace leaks, the relentless media scrutiny, it had all pushed her to the edge. And now, with the world watching, with the royal family in chaos, she was exhausted in a way that went beyond the physical. The public reaction to Harry's press conference was a mix of shock, sympathy, and skepticism. Supporters of the Sussexes praised Harry's bravery, calling him a hero for standing up for his wife. "Finally, someone is telling the truth," read one tweet. "Meghan doesn't deserve this. No one does." But the critics were just as vocal. Some accused Harry of exploiting Meghan's illness for sympathy, of using her pain as a weapon in his ongoing feud with the royal family. Others questioned the timing of the announcement, wondering if it was coincidental that it had come just as Prince William was gearing up for a major royal tour of the Caribbean. Was this, they asked, another Sussex power play? And then, there was the William factor. The Prince of Wales, who had been notably silent throughout the entire ordeal, was facing pressure of his own. As the future king, he was expected to lead, to unify the family in a time of crisis. But William, sources said, was struggling. He loved his brother. He missed his brother. But he also resented the way Harry had handled things, the public attacks, the media interviews, the constant drama. He felt caught between loyalty to his family and loyalty to the crown, and the strain was showing. Insiders reported that he and Kate had long, heated discussions about how to respond. In the end, they decided on silence, at least for now. But the tension between the brothers was palpable, a rift that seemed to grow wider with every passing day. The story, of course, didn't end there. Because just as the world was beginning to process Harry's press conference, another leak emerged. This one, even more explosive than the last. A former palace staffer, someone who had worked closely with both Harry and Meghan during their time as senior royals, came forward with a devastating claim. Meghan's diagnosis had been known to the royal household for nearly a year. And not only had they failed to offer support, but they had actively discouraged Harry and Meghan from going public with the news. They were told it would damage the monarchy's image, the staffer claimed, that it would distract from the king's coronation, that it was better to keep it quiet. The staffer also revealed that Camilla had been the driving force behind the decision to suppress the news, arguing that Meghan's health struggles were a private matter that didn't concern the public. But Harry, according to the staffer, had seen it differently. He felt betrayed. He felt like they were erasing Meghan's pain, and he wasn't going to stand for it. The revelation sent shockwaves through the royal world. If true, it meant that the palace had not just failed Meghan, they had actively worked to silence her. and that was a scandal of immense proportions. The British public, already deeply divided over the Sussexes, was outraged. Petitions demanding Camilla's apology began circulating online. Protesters gathered outside Clarence House, holding signs that read, "Justice for Meghan," and "Shame on the palace." Even members of Parliament began to weigh in, with some calling for a full investigation into how the royal household handles sensitive family matters. And then, King Charles made his move. In a rare, personal statement, he addressed the nation directly. His voice was shaky, his eyes red-rimmed as he spoke into the camera. "I have spent my life dedicated to duty. But duty, I have come to realize, means nothing without love. And I love my family. All of them." He paused, his hands trembling slightly. "I was not aware of the full extent of Meghan's condition until recently. And for that, I am deeply sorry. No one in my family should ever have to suffer in silence. And no one should ever feel as though their pain is less important than the reputation of this institution." It was the closest thing to an apology the royal family had ever given. But for many, it was too little, too late. Harry, watching the statement from Montecito, was moved but not satisfied. "It's a start," he reportedly told a friend. "But words aren't enough. There needs to be change." And change, it seemed, was finally coming. In the days that followed, Buckingham Palace announced a series of reforms aimed at improving transparency and support for royal family members facing personal crises. A new mental health initiative was launched, with a hotline for royals to access confidential counseling. And most significantly, Camilla stepped back from her public duties, at least temporarily, as she faced the fallout from the scandal. But the real change, the lasting change, was happening behind closed doors. For the first time in years, Harry and William were talking. Not in angry phone calls or passive-aggressive statements, but in real, raw, emotional conversations. According to sources, William had reached out to his brother after Charles's statement, and the two had a long, tearful call. "We don't have to agree on everything," William had reportedly said, "but we do have to be there for each other." Harry, for his part, had softened. He still stood by his criticisms of the institution, but he no longer saw his family as the enemy. And Meghan, though still fragile, was beginning to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. The weight of the world was still on her shoulders, but for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was carrying it alone. The story, of course, wasn't over. There were still questions that needed answers. Who had leaked the footage? Was it someone inside the palace, or had it been a hack? Would Camilla ever return to her full public role, or had her reputation been permanently damaged? And what did the future hold for Harry and Meghan? Would they ever reconcile with the royal family in a meaningful way? But for now, there was a fragile piece. A tentative hope that, maybe, just maybe, the worst was over. And yet, as the dust began to settle, one thing was crystal clear: would stick. The story wasn't over. But for now, there was quiet. And in that quiet, there was a chance to heal, a chance to rebuild, a chance to do better. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.